Let's see now the controls that can initiate commands, which, by the way, is a functionality that we're going to see later in the course, but basically it refers to some controls that can trigger events such as a button. A very common action is that you can click on it to execute a certain action. So let's start looking at those controls. And for this video, I have created a new page called Commands Controls Demo. I'm going to proceed to copy and paste some of these controls. I'm going to leave the stack layout element again, and we're going to start by analyzing this control. The control is called button. It is possible, as we had seen previously in a video, to assign a name to this control through x:name. We specify what is the name of this control, and we also have the possibility to assigning a text that is going to be shown as part of the button through the property called text. Additionally, we have an event which refers to the fact that the control will react in a certain way when we interact with it. In this case, when we click on the button, a certain action will be performed. How can we determine this action? Well, if we specify the event click equal to, we will get an option to create a new event handler that will be created as part of the code of this page. We can navigate to the code behind quickly by pressing the F7 key, and in this way we navigate directly to the code behind. This is the event handler that has been created as part of the clicked event, and this is where we code the logic to perform a certain action when we click on the button. For example, we have available a method called displayAlert that will allow us to display a message to the user. This method requests a title, a message, and a string for the cancel button. We can set a title equals to test, a demo text message, and as part of the message of the cancel button we place the string OK. Let's start the application. And once the application has been deployed, we already have in the upper part the button that we had specified. If we click on the button, we see this message being displayed, showing us each of the strings that we specified as part of the displayAlert method. The next control that we're going to analyze is one very similar to the button element. It is the image button control. In the case of this control, instead of setting a text as part of the button, we can set the source property. We're going to indicate that we want to use the image that we have used previously called .NET bot. You could use your own image if you wanted to. And again, we set the clicked event. We can reuse the same event handler that was defined earlier as part of this button. We visualize the changes once again. And this is what the application looks like. This does not look like a button, but if we click on this image that we are viewing, we are shown again the message that we have previously set. Ideally, you should specify an image that is more descriptive and that gives to understand that it is a button. In the same way, we can use a control called radio button. I am going to proceed to format this text a little better so that it looks in a better way. I'm going to stop the execution, and as part of this control we have a property called content, which is going to be the text that is going to be displayed as part of the radio button element. I'm going to quickly remove this property called group name, and I'm going to show you also another event that is part specifically of this control, which is the checked event. This event is going to let us know when the user selects one of the radio buttons. In this way, we will be able to determine if a certain option was selected to show a different graphical interface, for example, or to carry out some similar action. In this case, I am going to proceed to recreate this event handler, removing this definition that I had previously, and we are going to proceed to create it. If I go to the code behind, we see this event handler. I'm going to proceed to copy and paste a displayAlert that looks very similar to the one we had previously, only instead of showing this text that says this is a demo, we have indicated that we want to show what is the value that has been selected. Let's proceed to start the application again, and we can already see the control that has been created, which is this radio button. If we select the option, we see that we are already shown this message that the element has been changed. Now I will proceed to copy and paste this element 3 more times to test some other features. I'm going to change the content message and we're going to visualize the changes. The different options already appear, but notice that if we select any of these options, we only have a group of options. What would happen if, in such a case, we need to have other groupings to be able to make a selection between different elements? Well, what we can do is to set the property called group name. We're going to place, for example, group 1 as group name to this first radio button. We're going to do the same with the second radio button, but with the third radio button, we're going to indicate that we want a second group. We're going to change the group name to group 2. And if this time we select one of the elements, notice that we already have two different sections where we can select each of these options separately. Another control that we can use to initiate commands is this control called search bar. Here we have indicated that we want a name for this search bar, and we have an event called search button pressed, which is going to initiate the execution of a certain action. Let's create this event handler by clicking on New Event Handler. Let's navigate to the code behind. I have pasted a display alert that is going to show us the title searching, and as part of the message it is going to indicate us which is the search term that we have entered. Let's start the application, and here we have the search bar. If we position ourselves on it and click on it, the keyboard will appear so that we can enter some term. For example, we're going to insert NET Maui, and when we press this search button is when this event handler is really going to be executed. Then we click on it and the term that we have searched for appears. Finally, we have a control called swipe view, which will allow us to have within the content of the swipe view a main content, which can be a layout or a set of controls, and we will be able to move to the right or to the left the main content to display different options and execute certain action according to the pressed element. It is very common to see it in applications where we have emails. If we scroll one of the elements to the left or to the right, options appear, for example to delete the message, to forward it, or to reply to that message. These types of actions can be replicated thanks to the swipe view. We must specify as part of the properties of the swipe view if we want the elements to be displayed to the right or to the left of the element, that is to say, to modify the property left items or the property right items. We're going to test with the left items property, and as part of this property we must specify which are going to be the different swipe items. This is going to be a collection of different options that we're going to be able to display to the user, and we must specify a swipe item to indicate a specific action. I am going to replace this code with a code that I have previously created, and we specify some properties for each of the items. For example, its background color. We also specify an icon if we have one. We are going to use the same icon that we have been using, .NET Maui. We also have a property called invoke, which is the event that will allow us to initiate a certain action when we select one of the elements. For example, delete the element or forward a message. We have defined a second swipe item element with a different background color. I'm going to copy this same image for the icon image source. And since we have defined each of the options of the swipe view, we must define what is the main content of the swipe view. In this case, I am going to indicate that the content is a grid element, and as part of the grid we nest a label control with a text and some horizontal and vertical options. Once we have established the content of the swipe view, we're going to define this pair of events that we have not defined yet, which are the ones that are as part of the invoked event. Let's create the event handler, go to code behind, and as part of the event handler, I'm going to indicate that I want to use a display alert showing that one of the elements was selected. We start the execution to see how this example is seen in the emulator, and we can already see the main content of the swipe view. We can scroll to the right that content and we see the elements that appear in the part of the left. As we had specified, each of the options has a background color, a text, and an icon. If I click on one of the elements, we can see the message displaying that we have selected one of the elements.